From the cockpit of a lone German fighter, we witness a desperate, brutal struggle for the skies. A story from the other side of the legendary Big Week. This is a battle not just of machines, but of men, pushed to their absolute limits in the unforgiving skies over a war-torn Europe. Let's set the scene. Before we take flight, this story is brought to you by Call of War, a free-to-play online strategy game that puts you in command of a nation during the chaos of World War II. You'll research and deploy iconic tanks, aircraft, and other weapons of war, facing off against up to 100 real players in real time. Will you declare war on your neighbors, or will you forge unbreakable alliances? And for our viewers, the High Command has a special briefing. Sign up using the unique link below, and you'll receive a supply drop of 13,000 gold and a full month of premium subscription, completely free. This offer is only on the table for 30 days, so click that link, choose your nation, and begin your fight for victory. Now, to the skies. At 12:54 in the afternoon, on the 22nd of February, 1944, a 22-year-old lieutenant named Heinz Knoke of Jagdgeschwader 11 lifts off from his airbase at Wunstorf. In his Messerschmitt Bf 109G, he circles, waiting, but for what? His fighter group, which should number 36 aircraft, can only scrape together a meager 5 planes today. Can you even imagine? And to make matters worse, Knoke's wingman, Corporal Kruger, is on his very first combat mission. The 5 fighters are vectored towards an incoming raid of more than 1,000 enemy aircraft. Hopelessly outnumbered, Knoke and his comrades climb to a staggering 25,000 feet and fly south to meet their fate. This was the 3rd day of what the Allies called Big Week, a relentless, all-out attempt to crush the Luftwaffe in one decisive aerial knockout. After a brutal first day, the chief of the Luftwaffe, a furious Hermann Göring, called an emergency meeting. The crisis was escalating. His commanders convinced him to pull even more fighters from the bloodbath of the Eastern Front to defend the homeland. Furthermore, Göring was persuaded to unite all German fighter commands, a desperate move to speed up the time it took to get his planes in the air. The second day of Big Week, February 21st, had been awash as heavy clouds blanketed the continent. But the skies over Europe on February 22nd were clear, a perfect day for a maximum effort. 799 8th Air Force bombers, shielded by 659 fighters, were coming. Their targets, German aviation factories and airfields, the very heart of the Luftwaffe's ability to fight. And as if that wasn't enough, nearly 300 heavy bombers from the 15th Air Force in Italy were launching their own massive raid against Regensburg. It was a pincer movement from the sky, forcing the Reich defenders to fight a war on 2 fronts simultaneously. While over 1,000 American bombers were dispatched, the chaotic weather forced 333 to turn back, and another 177 were diverted. On this day, Knoke and the pilots of JG-11 were tasked with stopping a formation of 289 B-17s heading for the fighter production plants in central Germany. Now, Knoke was an ace 5 times over, a true master of his craft. But the idealistic young man who had eagerly joined the cause was long gone. In his place was an embittered, haunted veteran. The loss of so many friends had hardened him, convincing him this was a war that could not be won. He had made a cold peace with the fact that any mission could be his last. Reaching their intercept altitude of 25,000 feet, the 5 lonely Messerschmitts move to engage the bomber stream as it approaches the city of Hamelin. In a cruel twist of fate, this is Knoke's hometown. As they close in, 3 of the fighters peel off, their job to tangle with the American escorts they know are lurking nearby. That left Knoke and his rookie wingman alone, preparing to dive into the heart of the beast. This was a radical change in tactics. For months, the Luftwaffe had a simple, brutal doctrine: ignore the escort fighters, go straight for the bombers. And for a time, it worked, when the bombers flew with few, if any, escorts. But now, the skies were filled with deadly new predators: the nimble P-51 Mustang, the twin-boomed P-38 Lightning, and the rugged P-47 Thunderbolt. Attacking the bombers directly had become a suicide run. He spots them, a formation of 30 B-17 flying fortresses. The new Luftwaffe tactic was to split their forces. One half would act as bait, drawing off the escorts, while the other half punched through to the bombers. They had tried it just the day before. Knoke's squadron had dutifully engaged the escorts, but the other squadrons? They were swarmed by seemingly endless waves of Allied fighters and forced to run before they ever even saw a bomber. In the swirling dogfight that followed, Knoke's Bf-109G was simply outclassed by the agile P-51 and the heavily armored P-47. He had managed to escape, but the cost was devastating. "The new tactics cost my squadron 2 more dead," he bitterly wrote in his diary that night. But today, fortune seemed to smile on them. The massive bomber stream was stretched out, disorganized by the bad weather over Britain. The 30 B-17s before them were flying naked, without a single fighter to protect them. It was a rare opportunity. Knoke flicks on his gun camera and orders Kruger to stick to him like glue as they begin their dive. They come in from a textbook 12 o'clock high, their machine guns and cannons ripping into the cockpits of the lead bombers. In an instant, the sky erupts. Gunners aboard the fortresses fight back, filling the air with a storm of 50 caliber tracers as the 2 German fighters slice through the heart of the heavily defended formation. With lead crisscrossing the sky, Knoke and his wingmen pull up, bank hard, and prepare to strike again. They dive back into that hailstorm of machine gun fire. This time, Knoke bears down from 6 o'clock high, his guns blazing. The fortress tries to bank away, but the German ace stays locked on, holding his fire until a collision seems inevitable, breaking off only at the last possible second. Smoke, then fire, billows from the B-17's left wing. Knoke moves in for the kill, striking from 6 o'clock low. He peppers the wounded giant with cannon fire until its tail erupts in a ball of flame and the bomber falls from the sky. "I cannot help thinking of my camera," he later recalled, a chilling, detached thought in a moment of life and death. To his left, Corporal Kruger is hammering the tail of another B-17. For a rookie on his first mission, the kid is a natural. The lad had lots of guts, Knoke thought, watching him press his attack to within mere feet of the enemy. Suddenly, the flying fortress catches fire and enters an uncontrollable, terrifying spin. Kruger has scored a kill on his very first mission. Elated, out of ammunition, Knoke follows the burning wreck all the way down, watching it crash into a meadow where he used to land small planes as a teenager. He prepares to signal Kruger to head for home, to celebrate, to rearm. But then, in a heartbeat, another flaming aircraft hurtles out of the sky and explodes in a nearby lumber yard. Knoke scans the sky, searching for the other Messerschmitt, but it's gone. And a cold, horrifying realization washes over him. It was his wingman, the young corporal, after scoring a victory on his first ever mission, had been shot down by a gunner on one of the other bombers. A moment of triumph, snatched away in an instant. Dismayed, heartbroken, Knoke turns his plane for home. After 90 minutes in the air, he lands to find the rest of his small group has somehow survived. The Messerschmitts are quickly rearmed and refueled. There is no time to grieve. Hours later, the alarm sounds again. Knoke's group is scrambled to intercept the American bombers on their return trip to Britain. He spots the formation and again splits his force in two, hoping to draw off the escorts. He prays the bombers will be unprotected, just like they were that morning. But this time, there would be no luck. The bombers are swarmed by a wolf pack of P-47 Thunderbolts, and they massively outnumber the German interceptors. The Thunderbolts pounce. Knoke throws his 109 into a desperate series of spins and dives, but he can't shake the aggressive American pilots. He'd later write in his diary, with a grim sense of humor, "They seem altogether too eager to catch me with my pants down." After 30 minutes of intense, terrifying combat, the German ace uses every skill honed over 3 long years of war to finally escape the trap. Miraculously, the rest of his squadron manages to regroup at a lower altitude. The American fighters give up the chase. But by now, the bomber stream is long gone, too far away to catch. Knoke's group is forced to return to Wunstorf, their guns silent, their mission a failure. The frustrated and utterly exhausted pilots land and immediately throw themselves into bed, hoping, praying, that tomorrow might bring a moment's peace. For the Americans, the 22nd of February had been a costly day. Out of the 799 B-17s and B-24s sent out, a staggering 45 had been shot from the sky. More losses than the first 2 days of Big Week combined. Another 146 bombers were damaged, and Allied aircrews had sustained 465 casualties. But for the Luftwaffe, the day was even more catastrophic. They lost another 64 of their precious fighters, and more importantly, their irreplaceable veteran pilots. For the commander of U.S. strategic air forces in Europe, Karl Spaatz, the brutal math was working exactly as he'd planned. The Allies could absorb their losses, the Luftwaffe could not. Its fighter wing was being systematically ground down in a brutal war of attrition. Heinz Knoke would survive the war, credited with shooting down 33 Allied aircraft, 19 of them heavy bombers. But 2 days later, on the 24th of February, he wrote in his diary, "Our little band grows smaller and smaller. Every man can work out for himself, on the fingers of one hand, when his own turn is due to come." It was a grim arithmetic, the chilling reality for the defenders of the Reich.